It was so many world problems and national problems and state problems going on that I said, let's just call it. It's a lot going on and talk about it.
Whip it, whip it, work, 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 work.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Black Brief. Episode 7 is going to be called It Is a Lot Going On. So, welcome to The Black Brief, where I bring you your latest and greatest in politics, pop culture, and problems of the day, briefed in a very Jalen Black way. So thank you all for joining and tuning into another episode. Happy October. Like, where are my fall lovers? Where are my Halloween girls? Where are my people just excited for the fall? That is me. The fall has always been my favorite season. So I'm excited to announce that this is the first episode of our election series 2024. So this month, we're definitely going to bring even more content right to you as soon as it happens. We are very excited to produce these episodes because, as this episode is called, it's a lot going on. It truly is a lot going on. As I was prepping for the next round of episodes, it was so many world problems and national problems and state problems going on that I said, let's just call it. It's a lot going on and talk about it briefly, all of them. So let's start with the state of Georgia. First of all, I want to start with Hurricane Helene. This hurricane is one of the most deadly hurricanes we have seen. The latest death toll I've seen was about 160 people, but there's over like 400 to 500 people unaccounted for right now. So we do not know what that final death toll is going to look like. Immediately, I just want to say my heart and my prayers go out to these communities most devastated by the storm. I have been seeing horrible reporting of people trapped in their homes from South Georgia to Florida to other parts of Georgia to Tennessee to the Appalachia area in North Carolina. There's so many communities impacted. South Carolina. One of the partnering organizations of the organization I worked for said that they were happy to announce that their staff was accounted for of being alive. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this storm is a lot worse than I think people thought it would be. And it is already our most deadly storm since Hurricane Katrina. And yeah, this is just a time to remember that climate change is freaking real, y'all. Like, the most devastated communities in North Carolina, some of them are about 300 miles from the coast. That's a long way. So it's not just coastal cities. It's not just coastal areas. Climate change is impacting us all. And I think that relates politically as well. Like, I think it's very important for us to support candidates that are understand that climate change is real and that we have to make drastic impacts immediately to combat its impacts, because these storms will continue to get worse. And we know how flood insurance is in the state of Georgia. They do not try to cover things. So this is a really, really important issue. So I just know it was terrifying for me, like calling family members, I have family members all across the South. Particularly in the Southeast. So it's just, I want to say that hurricane is a lot. I've been tracking how this is looking like politically, because everything is politics this month, right? President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris have come down to the state of Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, to just really see the devastation, because how it works with the federal government is that they can approve funding, like governors and members of Congress request this funding for their most devastated counties. And then the federal government can approve that funding to get emergency relief for these areas. So that is what is happening now. It is truly, there's nothing positive about storms, but I will say it's time that you usually see a lot of bipartisan unity, because people from your Republican governor to your Democratic senators to your state representatives are coming together, signing joint letters saying, please help our communities. It's really sad. I read a reporting that a 4 and a 7-year-old died together in their beds in South Georgia, and they put them in the casket together with the older sister over her younger brother. And my heart, y'all, I was like, these young Black children in South Georgia who had no idea that, the storm was coming and that it would claim their lives. So that is something going on. Another thing going on, not to fearmonger that it is World War III, but it is getting very ugly in the Middle East, y'all. As you know, for about over a year now, since the initial Hamas attack on Israel, and since Israel's year response of the slaughter of Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza. And now Iran has dropped a ton of missiles on Israel. And listen, you guys, Iran and the US, mm-mm. And the fact that Israel is a strong US ally, now the US is determining how much they want to convene in this. This is boiling over, people. This conflict has been going on, but now it's a big significance that Iran bombed Israel because, as y'all know, Israel loved to drop some bombs themselves. So we're on the brink of what could be total war. And I want to say that very literally. This is not I want everybody to get worried about this thing, but this is how international things work. When our allies are attacked, when especially with against countries that we've had long troubles with, you can kind of predict what is going to happen next. So I just want to say this and say this now, that all the innocent lives that are going to be lost because of conflicts that people probably have nothing to do with is also going to be devastating. So it is not, it doesn't bring me joy at all bringing these updates because I know it's just so much going on in the world, but I am paying close attention to what's going on in the Middle East as it relates to Iran and Israel, and seeing how the U.S. is going to respond and how we're going to intervene and if we deploy troops and things like that. So again, a lot going on. Another thing going on. This is just so crazy, y'all. I just like too much news, too much news. Um, in Georgia, about not super far, I would say maybe like 30, 40 miles from where I currently live, there was a chemical plant in Conyers, Georgia, that completely exploded, releasing chemical toxins in the air. They're calling it a chemical plume. Never heard of that before. All I can say is from the videos of what I've seen from this chemical explosion, it has been ugly. My predictions is this is going to be one of those things when they call in our phones in 20 years. Were you around when the blah, blah, blah chemical plant, and you might be subject to cancer? You should look. I feel like that's how these things start. Because why is a chemical plant exploding? Like it's so interesting how the problems of the day also relate back to politics, inevitably. When you take away regulations of how you regulate and how you modify these chemical plants, for example, it impacts things. If you remove regulations, now you're more prone to these things happening. You remember just recently we had a recall of boar's head meat. Yes, thank you, Donald Trump. He removed governmental regulations of certain foods. Like, people need to pay attention to these things, because when these things happen, they're not always having the most direct impact on us that day. But I kid you not, in the next year, in the subsequent years, we're seeing it. And then you're like, oh, well, this person is president at the time, knowing dang well it was done on this president. It's just, you have to pay attention to who's making these decisions. I am very concerned about this chemical plant. It's over. They've stopped the fire and things like that. But there's huge swaths of just smoggy clouds over parts of Georgia right now. Like, it's moved from like the Eastern Metro, and now it's kind of like in coastal Georgia. So Savannah, Statesboro, Waycross, like it is what? Like, this is crazy, y'all. What is happening? What is going on? The name of this episode is It's a Lot Going On. So those were kind of the main things I pull. Of course, Georgia it's never a slow day in news. And a major thing also going on is Georgia's abortion ban was overturned. This is great for people seeking miscarriage and abortion care, because they're performed in the same way. But it's so interesting to me because people are, we're very excited in the reproductive world of seeing as many patients as early as possible, as soon as possible, knowing people rely on these services. But I am expecting the Georgia Supreme Court to challenge it. I'm expecting Georgia Republicans, anti-life people to challenge it. So we're very excited that the Georgia's ban was ruled unconstitutional and they reference political interference in this. And it's basically saying women and birthing people aren't political pawns with their bodies. Women and birthing people deserve the right to make decisions for their bodies. That's what the judge ruled. So that is a big thing happening in the state. So if you're someone looking at this right now and you're in the state of Georgia and you need to access this important care, please reach out to many places that provide care, including Planned Parenthood Southeast and other like Sister Song, Feminist Women's Organization. There's a lot of great organizations that work in reproductive care. So that's a big thing. So these are just big things going on right now. I'm really excited with this election series because we're truly going to tailor this by what's going on in the world and how that relates politically and just continual updates of how these races are shaping out. So swing it over a bit to politics. We started off with problems of the day because they were glaring. Politics is related to a lot of those things, right? We mentioned some of this earlier, but in general state of the race, this is what I'm seeing right now. Of course, we just had the vice presidential debate, and I think all of America can just have like a huge sigh of relief that that debate was normal. Like we're so used to the Donald Trump like era to where like debates come oddly but sadly entertaining in like the worst ways. It's weird. It's like entertaining, but also this is kind of not funny because y'all are making decisions for my life. What? But the vice presidential debate, I want to give a shout out to both candidates, Tim Walz and JD Vance. I think they both did a great job, like just in their debate prep. It was very substantial policy debate. Vice presidential debates don't really have the hugest swings historically on elections, but I do think it can damage you. I don't think any candidate performed to a level that damaged them. A glaring thing, though, from JD Vance was that he did not accept the fact that Donald Trump did not win the 2020 presidential election. And I'm like, sir, you're trying to be the vice president and you're still claiming election rigging.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
You're not answering that question. That's odd. I thought Tim Walz started off a little nervous. Starting off initially, I thought he cleared that up a bit well. And I think he really brought the case and reminded people JD Vance is attached to Donald Trump. So JD Vance can look good as he like lies and like says things that's like not totally true. And like he's a Yale man and let me sound good as I say this. Yes, I've dealt with those type of white men before. But it's still not true. Some of it is what he said. So that's kind of a big thing going on. What the polls are looking at is what they keep saying is that this race is completely tight, y'all. Like there is no front runner in the presidential race, which means you watching this right now, please get your people out there and vote. Voting has already started. In some states, voting has already started. In Georgia, you can be requesting your absentee ballot and voting right now. Early voting starts very soon. So your cousin who has not voted since 2008, text them right now and then text 20 other people because this race is going to come down to what happens in Georgia, but also this race is just going to be tight in general in all these swing states. There is no clear front runner. I said this in 2016, but I'm going to say this in 2024. Do not take Donald Trump and his base for granted. It might be crazy to say, oh, Donald Trump, it just doesn't seem like he would be, winning right now because sometimes the Democratic ticket does just look stronger on paper and they are the incumbents. And what an incumbent is basically you're in office and you're running again. But Donald Trump has supporters that will support him regardless of what he does, regardless of what he says, and regardless of what is actually true and what is actually not. So everybody needs to vote. I cannot be more serious that this race is very tight. And lastly, we will conclude with a little pop culture, what the people are talking about. Let's talk about Sean Diddy Combs, Diddy, Puff Daddy, however, whoever y'all want to call him. He is behind bars. He is currently locked up. Okay. So a couple weeks ago, they seized his properties, I believe, and took Diddy to jail. But there's so much speculations going on right now, and I'm kind of here for the speculations and drama because I think a lot of people might be going down with Diddy. I don't know who, I don't know what, I don't know the circumstances. There's a lot of powerful people that also have a lot of money, some that are also billionaires that could maybe get out of things a bit easier. But these alleged parties that he had been having, the things that he has done, I think a lot of people were involved. Again, like you're an up and coming artist, in that time, and a Diddy party is the place to be. I know y'all were seeing some stuff that you were just like, huh, that's odd. Usher said in an interview, like all this stuff is resurfacing. And I'm not saying Usher did any wrong in this. We don't know yet. But Usher said in an interview that like he like experienced that coming up, but he would not let his kids go to a Diddy party. And I'm just like, that goes to show what was probably taking place. I also want to say I just feel so bad for Justin Bieber. Let me tell y'all, I was the believer. Okay, like I was the believer, baby, baby, baby. Yeah, that was very much me. I love me some Justin Bieber. I just always thought he was like, you know what I'm saying, like just Justin. Baby, Justin Bieber is somewhat involved in something with this Diddy case. I had just been seeing so many things circulate with him, like being young and, being an up and coming artist and like being a part of this. Like literally poor Justin Bieber was like 15 years old. People forget he came up when he was so young. So he was around this stuff early. And I just think whatever happens to Diddy, he deserves it because I feel like that man is guilty among so many counts. I just want to say, like, kind of like in closing, that for a survivor to speak up and to even have the guts and bravery to file a lawsuit against a man that is so powerful. I don't, and this is not just about women. I think a lot of people deal with some sort of violence in a relationship, and a lot of people aren't talking about that. So for her, Cassidy, I'm speaking of, to start this replica on him, is powerful. And I just want that to inspire other people. You're never obligated to talk about some of the most traumatic things of your life. But when you decide, if you decide to make the decision, know there is probably thousands of others who've experienced similar things, who you could really be a voice for of changing their lives and saving their lives. That's a lot of trauma to be dealing with. So I'm tuned in to what this Diddy case makes up. That mother Diddy needs to be in jail. Let me just say that. Diddy, after that video that I saw of him dragging Cassidy, I said, oh, he gonna get it in jail because, again, we've talked about domestic violence in another Black Brief episode. It's serious. Diddy is guilty on many things, but I am curious to see of these other, I've been hearing some other names float around. I won't just speculate, but some other names, particularly in California, are also a part of this. So we will see y'all. I will be in touch about what happens with this pop cultural event. I know it's a lot of stars, maybe your favorite artist, maybe your favorite basketball player, maybe, we will see. We will see. But look at the time. I actually forgot my watch, but it's cool to say. Speaking of Black, speaking of Brief, thank you for joining another episode of the Black Brief, episode 7. It is a lot going on. I'll see y'all next time.